In the far corner of the shelter, behind a rusted chain-link door, lay a dog who had once been a hero. His name was Duke, a German shepherd who had spent nearly a decade serving as a search and rescue K9. He had pulled people from floodwaters and found missing hikers when no one else could, but now his coat was patchy, his ribs faintly visible beneath thinning fur, and his eyes were clouded with fatigue. Most visitors never paused by his kennel. They were drawn to the younger dogs, the ones who leapt up, tails wagging, eager to be noticed. Duke no longer had the strength to stand, let alone compete for attention. Instead, he rested his head on a warm blanket, lifting it only when footsteps echoed down the row. Shelter staff tried to comfort him. They slipped extra treats into his bowl and whispered kind words. But Duke's breathing was shallow, and everyone knew time was running out. He was an old dog with failing health and no family to claim him. As the afternoon light slanted across the concrete floor, Duke closed his eyes and waited, hoping someone might still see the hero he used to be. Day after day, people streamed past Duke's kennel, their voices rising and excited chatter as they pointed out wagging puppies and playful young dogs. Each time the door swung open, Duke's ears twitched, and he tried to lift his head higher. For a moment, hope would flicker in his tired eyes, but it never lasted. Visitors glanced in his direction, their smiles faltering as they took in his frail frame and graying muzzle. Some looked away quickly, uncomfortable. Others offered soft apologies he couldn't understand before moving on. The door would close, footsteps would fade, and Duke would lower his head back onto the blanket. In the evenings, when the shelter quieted, the staff gathered to discuss the animal's chances of adoption. Duke's name always brought a heavy silence to the room. He deserves better, one of the volunteers whispered, brushing tears from her cheek. But who's going to take an old dog who might not make it through the month? No one ever answered, because no one knew all they could do was make him comfortable. And so each morning, Duke waited again, listening to the rustle of papers and the click of shoes, hoping that maybe today someone would finally stop for him. On a bright afternoon, when the shelter was busiest, the front door opened and a woman stepped in, holding the hand of a small boy. He couldn't have been more than 8 years old, with dark hair that fell into his eyes and a shy, searching expression. While his mother spoke quietly to the receptionist, he tugged free and started down the rows of kennels. Other dogs leapt up, barking and wagging their tails, eager to catch his attention. He paused now and then to watch them, but his gaze kept drifting past their cages, as if he was looking for something else, someone he hadn't found yet. When he reached Duke's kennel, he stopped completely. The old dog didn't have the strength to lift his head all the way, but he turned just enough to look back at the boy. For a moment, neither moved. It was as if the noise of the shelter fell away. Slowly, the boy crouched down and pressed his small hand to the fence. Duke's nose twitched, catching the faint scent of soap and something sweet. Maybe the crumbs of a cookie still clinging to the boy's sleeve. And for the first time in weeks, Duke's tail made a small, hopeful thump against the blanket. The boy stayed there, crouched by Duke's kennel, his hand resting against the cold metal fencing. A shelter volunteer approached and knelt beside him, her voice gentle. "Would you like to see some of the younger dong?" she asked, motioning toward the row where eager puppies yipped and tumbled over each other. But the boy didn't move. He kept his eyes fixed on Duke, whose tired gaze met his without wavering. It was as if the old dog understood that this child saw him not as broken or dying, but as someone still worthy of love. His mother joined them, her expression concerned. "Honey, he's very sick," she murmured, brushing hair from the boy's forehead. "He might not be here much longer." Her words trembled with sadness. The boy looked up at her, his voice barely a whisper. "That's why he needs someone." "Now," he said simply. A hush fell over the space between them. The volunteer swallowed hard, glancing away to hide, the tears pulling in her eyes. In that moment, no one could deny the bond forming across the kennel bars. A quiet promise between a boy and an old dog that neither would leave the other behind. The shelter manager came over, holding Duke's thin medical file. Her expression was kind but somber as she knelt to speak with the boy's mother. "Ma'am, I need to be honest," she began. Gently, "He's in the final stages of kidney failure. He may only have weeks, maybe days." The woman looked down, her face tight with uncertainty. She had come hoping to find a dog her son could grow up with, not one already slipping away. Her hand rested protectively on the boy's shoulder. "I don't know if we can handle this," she admitted in a shaky voice. But the boy didn't look away from Duke. His small fingers curled around the chain link, and his eyes were fierce with something older than his years. "Mom," he said quietly, "he needs someone to love him, even if it's just for a little while." Tears welled in her eyes. She knelt beside him, pressing her cheek to his hair. For a long moment, they stayed like that, the three of them, sharing the same hushed space. Then she nodded, her decision made. "Okay," she whispered, her voice breaking. "We'll bring him home." The adoption papers felt heavier than any the shelter manager had ever handed over. She slid them across the counter to the boys. Mother, her hand trembling. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice thick with emotion. "You're giving him something none of us could." While the paperwork was signed, the boys sat cross-legged outside Duke's kennel, talking to men. A steady, comforting whisper. Duke's ears twitched at the sound of his new friend's voice, and his eyes followed every movement. It was as if he already understood this boy was his person now. When the door finally swung open, Duke didn't try to stand. Instead, the boy stepped inside and wrapped his arms around the dog's frail neck. Slowly, with effort that seemed to cost all his strength, Duke lifted his head and rested it against the boy's shoulder. Shelter workers wiped their eyes as the boy gently led Duke out into the sunlight. For a moment, the old dog paused at the threshold, breathing in the fresh air he hadn't tasted in so long. And then, with the boy's hand resting protectively on his back, Duke stepped forward, leaving the lonely kennel and the sadness it held behind forever. In the days that followed, Duke discovered what it felt like to be home. Again, the boy made a soft bed for him beside the couch, arranging blankets so carefully it looked like a nest. Every morning, Duke opened his eyes to find the boy sitting cross-legged nearby, reading stories aloud in a quiet, steady voice. Though his body grew weaker, Duke's spirit seemed to brighten. He wagged his tail when the boy came home from school and lifted his head to greet him with a soft, grateful sigh. The neighbors who came to visit couldn't help but smile when they saw the two together, an old dog and a little boy who seemed to understand each other perfectly. At night, the boy would crawl under the blankets and whisper secrets into Duke's ear. Sometimes the dog's breathing was so shallow that the boy would lay his hand on Duke's chest just to feel the soft rise and fall. Though everyone knew Duke's time was short, those weeks were filled with more love than some dogs know in a lifetime. And in that warm, quiet house, Duke was never alone. He was home, and he was cherished.